W5. A young life fascinated by the sea, dedicated to revealing the beauty beneath the waves,
His curiosity was always there.
bound to protest senseless slaughter of its creatures.
Oceanic white-tip shark populations have dropped 99%.
A life tragically lost in the waters he cherished.
That was the last I saw of him.
Kevin Newman,
This was a surprise that he had the movie laid out.
Yeah.
with a story of courage, devotion, and loss.
Oh, it mattered that we found him. I wouldn't have stopped.
One man's fearless quest,
He knew absolutely the sharks would never get him.
one family's will to finish his journey.
It's been a heroic effort on their part to finish their son's vision.
Its shockwaves felt around the world,
A well-known Toronto filmmaker is missing at sea tonight.
and a dream that sparked a revolution.
And we have a whole new generation of people who have been inspired by Rob.
Here is Kevin Newman.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. Rob Stewart was the world's foremost advocate for sharks. Through his films, his diving, and his advocacy, the young Canadian single-handedly challenged our fear of sharks and helped protect them. He died last year, not even 40, during a diving mishap while he was filming his latest movie, Sharkwater Extinction. W5 has been granted access to outtakes from that movie and to his family and friends who helped complete it. It's the first time they've spoken in public at length about Rob. This was where Rob Stewart found his peace and his passion, challenging our fear of sharks and our indifference to their survival.
Sharks are in more trouble than ever before. We're killing up to 150 million sharks a year. And I thought that if I could change the public's view of sharks, if I could make them love these animals like I did, see that they're beautiful and amazing and magnificent and important, then maybe they'd want to fight for their protection like they fight for pandas and elephants and bears.
This is the story of Rob's family and friends who are determined to keep his hope and his memory living. If you hope to help others see sharks as Rob did, you might want to start with some energetic music. And then walk the streets of Toronto in a celebratory parade alongside some of the team as determined as Rob was to educate the masses away from only seeing the menacing jaws of a great white shark. He would want them celebrating this incredible moment, would have been part of this energy and whimsy that so many found infectious about him.
Okay, we're ready to go.
But he also left an enormous hole in their lives, felt deeply on this day, when the movie he died making has its debut at Toronto's prestigious International Film Festival.
It's the most special moment possible, but the fact that Rob's not here and we are is a tragedy.
Among those who have traveled for the premiere, the friend who was there the day Rob took his final fateful dive, Brock Cahill.
I'm very hopeful that they'll see the example of Rob Stewart and a beautiful young man that gave everything that he had to work for what he loved and to fight for what's beautiful.
Completing the movie fell onto Rob's bereaved parents, Brian Stewart and Sandra Campbell.
Today is a celebration of delivering Rob's film to his audience, and I think that's
Celebration of his life in a way, too, and a celebration of the movement he created.
For a year and a half, they used all their resources and contacts as owners of a Canadian media and publishing company to finish what their son could not. You're sitting in the theater, you're waiting for the movie that you've spent a year and a half making. What was going through your mind?
Is he watching?
Gratitude.
Did you have any doubt he was watching?
No, I think he was there. I think from the second we got dressed that morning, we sort of felt his presence.
There were thousands packed into the auditorium to hear Chantal Kreviazuk's moving tribute to Rob before the film started.
And here a bird cannot get lost.
And then the lights went down. And larger than life once again, Rob Stewart's Sharkwater Extinction fills the hall with his new call to action.
So we just snuck into Costa Rica the first time since 2002. The word is out in the Costa Rican government now that I'm here and that Sharkwater's here and we're making Sharkwater 2 and we're not here without filming permits. They don't even know we're in the country. So we gotta watch our back.
Not a sad movie.
It's not a sad movie, no.
No, it's not.
And that was one of the challenges, is how do you get his go forward message out there? Because he just never wanted anything to end without people thinking there's hope, we can change this, we can work together.
People tell you your whole life to be afraid of sharks. Pretty well everything we've been receiving from the media, from just about everybody, is that sharks are dangerous and they're gonna kill you and they're gonna eat you. But the reality is totally different.
450 million years of sharks' presence on Earth, we've decimated in 30 years. Shark populations dropped 90% in 30 years. 90%. How could this be happening? How could this be happening?
As a parent, can't imagine seeing my child larger than life again.
Because we had been involved in the film so closely for the last 19 months, we had seen Rob almost every day on footage. And to see your son on the screen every day and talking back to you, it's like he's there. And then the hardest part is when you turn the screen off and you know he's gone.
There must have been times in the making of this film when it just had to be too much for you guys.
There wasn't an option. There wasn't an option to give up at any point, because I think...
You do sometimes reach a point, it's like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do?
I went in the back deck a number of times and said, Rob, I can't keep going. I was exhausted, and somehow you get some rest and you keep going. And I don't think we ever had a chance to say, we can't do this. Our adventurous son.
It's that determined spirit Brian and Sandra nurtured in their children, Rob and his sister, Alexandra.
He's with Alex there.
They were an active family growing up, traveled often, and often challenged each other to push the limits.
What will it take to wear 150 pounds?
A lot more than it'll take to wear you and me, I'll tell you.
It was a happy, comfortable life. Rob excelled at math and biology, and eventually discovered that he was incredibly comfortable in water. He could hold his breath underwater in the family pool longer than anyone.
He was in the water from the time he was a year old, and he just loved it. The pool we have here now is where he learned how to dive.
Really, right here?
Yeah,
Yep,
right here.
when he was 13 years old.
What was that like? What do you remember about that?
It was an intense weekend.
Brian wasn't so happy about joining up.
The objective was to learn how to dive in 2 days. We've had an instructor come to the house and put us through all the classes.
That love of water led to a fascination with animals and reptiles, and the usual little brother teasing of his big sister, Alexandra.
I remember being kept awake for months and months on end after crickets he was feeding to some lizards escaped into our house, and they chirp all night, and they seem to like my room better than the rest of the house. I remember him bringing a 8-foot boa constrictor to our wedding brunch.
Your wedding brunch?
To my wedding brunch. To the surprise and delight and horror of many of the wedding guests.
It was just always fascinating.
Everywhere we went,
him.
he was always, the second we went to the Caribbean or any vacation, his mandate was, I'm not going inside, I'm going hunting. And he'd invariably come back within half an hour with something in his hand he had caught. It would be a lizard or a frog or a snake or something, and it was just, his curiosity was always there.
Which led to filmmaking when he was only 8.
You getting this? This is Herman the paper turtle. Yay! I'm doing just darling.
and eventually his first encounter with a shark.
He's in the Caribbean, and we used to go there for holidays after Christmas every year. And he would just love the reefs because in those days there was just so much wildlife all over them, so colorful. And he saw a reef shark, and it was terrified of him.
And I think Rob realized that if this little shark is afraid of him, why should I be afraid of it? And he then jumped into studying sharks, bought every shark book you could imagine, everything from Encyclopedia of Sharks to amazing books, and he devoured them.
His debut movie as a professional, Sharkwater, was a financial success, earning more than 40 film festival awards and making him an international celebrity.
The word was out that fins meant money, and sharks were being killed solely for their fins in virtually every country with a coastline.
It led more than 90 countries to ban or restrict the brutal maiming of sharks for their fins, a food delicacy. Inspired a young generation of activists to see sharks as needing protection from people instead of the other way around. But his advocacy also pushed shark harvesting underground, which accelerated the butchery. His new movie makes the case that some sharks are now being hunted to extinction.
We're not just killing sharks for shark fin soup. Sharks are also turning up in pet food, livestock feed, fertilizer, and even in cosmetics. We're smearing endangered super predators on our faces without knowing it.
What relationship did he really want people to understand?
How sharks matter in the ocean. If you take out the sharks, you take out the top predators, the fish underneath them explode, and those fish, eat their way down the food chain, and they eat the plankton, and the plankton right now is really important to us. Well, right now, always. It gives us 70% of our oxygen. And you upset that balance, and the plankton goes away.
Someone's got to put a stop to it, and I think he felt it was his job. He was on a mission to make sure it stops and get people to live in balance with the ocean.
A labor of love.
Once we knew we had this, there was an obligation to make sure we saw it through.
Brings lost ones closer.
I believe he's still here in many ways.
When W5 continues.
So we're gonna ruck up to Padrenas, pull out our cameras, and see if we can film anything illegal happening on the weekends and happening without any official body watching.
His professional life was starting to get easier just before Rob Stewart drowned on his final dive to capture footage of a rare species of shark. He had secured the funding for his latest movie, Sharkwater Extinction, and had already filmed most of the key scenes he wanted. He was looking forward to finishing it. But it was his parents, Brian and Sandra, who that burden fell to only weeks after Rob's death.
What is the time code there? Is that 1:42 in?
1:42.
Yep.
For 19 months, they combed hundreds of hours of footage of their son, drawing on decades of experience in promoting and reviewing movies.
I think maybe what's making me think there's a lot of black is
Everything is black.
the color's gone.
Foot's framing.
Oh, much better.
Listened to his words, tried to get into his mind. I've thought about you a lot in editing suites, in sound stages, watching promotions. Seeing him so much this last year and a half, was there anything about that that was therapeutic for you?
I believe he's still here in many ways, and I think there are times when he gave us direction. Crazy things would happen, little quirky things would happen. We're in the middle of struggling with what to do next and so on. And that was sort of a sign that he was with us on the journey to finish the film.
Was there some comfort in channeling him in the creation of this movie?
Absolutely. You absolutely had to channel Rob to get his messaging out there, I think.
The big issue was really understanding what Rob wanted to do with the movie, understanding his objective, reading his notes to get an idea of the style. He had written an outline for the entire movie with its arcs and everything else, and I think that was the key. Once we got into his computer and into his iPad, because he took fantastic notes and did great mind mapping and sort of linked everything together. So once we found that information, the question is, do we have footage to match it? This is Rob's mind map, and what the mind map does is let you take all your thoughts related to what you're trying to do and show the correlation between the main thought and any subordinate thoughts that may be supporting what you're trying to do.
It was an incredibly rich guide for his parents to follow. A mind map of every thought, every interview, every point he wanted to make in Sharkwater Extinction. So was this a surprise to you that he had?
Total surprise. I mean, he and I toyed with the idea of mind mapping the future of what he wanted to do, and we did it with his company, and we did it with a couple other things. And once he found out what this did, he just went, as you can see.
Applied it for everything.
It's his whole world.
So this was like a map that led to the movie.
Exactly.
What a gift.
Yeah, sharks that will survive or will not survive, he identified them. Here he gives you the story arc of how he was going to shoot the movie, the locations he's going to do. Cabo Verde is key.
This is the finished scene in Cabo Verde, Africa. Rob was determined to uncover the scope of the illicit shark trade and took incredible risks to get aboard a trawler. Rob's parents never heard from him how hairy this moment got in filming, but then they discovered this in one of his hard drive archives.
So I walked down there, and right next to the Spanish ship offloading blue sharks is a Christian missionary mobile library. As I was walking around, I realized I was wearing the same color shirt as all of the missionaries on the library bookstore. So I walked right up to the to the Spanish shipping boat and just started asking them questions, and they're all like, "You're from Lagos?" I'm like, "Yeah." Talked about God for a second or two in a language I didn't understand, and then carte blanche, could film anything, got in the shipping container, filmed blue sharks again, asked them where they're coming from, where they're going, so it's perfect.
Wow. So much money.
Is this full, or it will be all the way full?
All the way full.
All the way, wow.
There's a scene in the movie where he goes into the hull of a freezer boat. It would be so easy for them to just close the hull on him.
Those were dangerous things to do.
Those are dangerous things to do. But he felt he had to show it.
Some of his near-death experiences we never heard about, and some of them we only heard about because we saw them on screen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
That's something a parent doesn't really want to have in a movie.
Oh my gosh, that happened? I can't believe that.
Like what went down in Costa Rica. Rob had exposed the shark fin butchering industry in his first film and wanted to see for his new film if laws banning it had worked. His right-hand diving mate, Brock Cahill, went with him, even though they knew authorities might arrest them for trying.
It got sketchy at times, and we talked about the possibilities of what could go down with that. But that never really stopped us from moving forward with the mission. Each of us was like, well, what happens if, one of us gets hurt or something goes bad? And one of Rob's mottos was, well, would it be good for the film? Okay, let's do it.
The film shows them launching a drone over a port and discovering a hole in a roof.
Holy shit, there's one clear panel and I think there's fins in it.
And then proof the shark fin harvesting was defying a ban. Criminal elements had taken it over. Later, they discover the hotel they're staying in may have links to groups they call the Shark Fin Mafia. So, they bolt.
We need to leave this place right now.
What's going on?
Okay, this hotel is from the owner of Mariscos Guan. It's Diego, so it's one of the big mafia. I think we have to check out and go our separate ways.
For sure.
We always used to say that, the dangers that live in this line of work are not necessarily in the water. Most of the time when we discussed risks, we were talking about, human conflict.
One of the things that strikes me about Rob is he had a relationship with death in his life.
Yeah.
He thought a lot about it.
He knew he was challenging the norms and had to go beyond that level that, I think...
But they were calculated.
Yeah.
There was no expectation ever that the diving would be the cause.
Yeah.
He knew absolutely the sharks would never get him.
Totally.
But yeah, there were calculated risks through there.
It was another calculated risk Rob Stewart took early one January morning off the coast of the Florida Keys when he hired an instructor to help him film a rare species of shark deep in the water.
Change your set point to high, calibrate if necessary. You hear your solenoid fire?
Yep.
The guides claim to have expertise in a new technology that recycled the air in tanks instead of expelling it in bubbles.
Check your pressure. Everything good? You get normal readings? Everything down around 10%?
0.12 everywhere.
Good. Okay. Okay, close your loop when you're done.
Rob hoped it would allow him to stay under the water longer to film.
We're taking the best rebreather in the world down to film sawfish for the first time.
All right, I'll go first, Rob second, you're third and fourth.
Okay. And you guys are good to pass Brock the camera?
It turned out to be one calculated risk too many.
A final dive
That day was starting out as a beautiful adventure.
takes a perilous turn
It doesn't look great.
when W5 continues.
Welcome back. The making of Sharkwater Extinction was clearly a labor of love for Rob Stewart's parents. They spent almost every day finishing it since their son died while on a dive in the Florida Keys. Those 3 days in 2017 when Rob was lost at sea were a nightmare for Brian and Sandra and their daughter Alexandra. But also for one of his diving partners that day, his friend Brock Cahill, who now shares what happened at sea in his own words.
That day was starting out as a beautiful adventure. We were super excited to be working on the film and super happy to be back in the water and working on these technical dives, which we'd trained so hard for. Robbie was excited to find sawfish. Sawfish are an extremely elusive creature, you know, very shy and very rare at this point. And Robbie really wanted to highlight them in this film as an enigmatic character and you know, something that could draw people in. They're a dinosaur of sorts, you know, really interesting. We were given some intel that this wreck off of Isla Morada in the Keys of Florida that lives at about 225 feet was a conglomeration point for sawfish during the full moon in January. So it took quite a bit of planning and training and logistics to get us ready and prepared to go give this a shot.
These are rebreathers. They recirculate the air that you breathe and inject the quantity of gases that you want, depending on the depth that you're going to. And they let you get a lot closer to fish and sharks because you don't make bubbles, which are very scary for animals like that. And you can stay down a lot longer. You can stay down for 6 hours, almost as long as you want or need to. So we're going to use this new technology to go deeper than we've ever been before to film a creature that people have rarely seen in the wild, the sawfish, one of the most endangered sharks in the world. What order do you want to go in?
I'll go first, Rob second, you're third and fourth. Do it.
So we did a couple of dives that day. Obviously they weren't without challenge, you know. It's deep water, you know, 225 feet is nothing to sneeze at. The water's cold at that depth. Being in the water for quite a bit of time is a tax on your body. And then of course, visibility in a place like this was tremendously eerie and ghostly. Unfortunately, we didn't find any sawfish on this wreck. We were striking out, so in a discussion, we decided, well, it might be best to pull the plug on this mission now and come back at a different time where visibility might be better and we might have more luck. So It was decided that we needed to bounce down and pick up an anchor. I decided not to go on that final dive. I was worn out and tired and cold. Our instructor said, well, I'd be happy to go down and get the anchor, but if somebody wanted to go with me, that'd be great. And Robbie said, I'll go with you. And his last words to me, I said to him, well, you mind if I don't go? And he said, no, enjoy the surface. You know, and that's the last thing he said to me. And I said, okay, be good, be safe, I'll see you on the flip. And they dove down, it was a bounce dive, picked up the anchor. You know, they both surfaced, and I had eyes on Robbie, and I saw his eyes, and he was there, and coherent, and he gave his okay sign, and that was the last I saw of him. And our instructor climbed aboard the boat and had an incident and collapsed, and all eyes kind of turned towards what was going on there. And I said, oh shit, if he's having a problem, Robbie might be having a problem. And I looked back and said, where's Rob? And he wasn't there. And as quickly as I could, I was already out of my gear, but as quickly as I could, I grabbed a mask and fins and jumped in the water and started looking around for him. But I couldn't find him. And he'd already slipped. And it was the most heart-wrenching feeling I've ever felt before in my life, and I was just screaming at the top of my lungs underwater, no, no. But it was just too late. I've had to relive those moments like every day. And it's the worst day of my life, obviously. It's tragic watching your best friend go, you know.
A well-known Toronto filmmaker is missing at sea tonight off the Florida Keys.
As Coast Guard tells us, they're using a helicopter, a boat, a team of divers, and in the last hour, they've just added a plane to that search.
We got on a plane last night and came down here and drove to Key West, arrived at 5 in the morning.
On the shoreline, Rob Stewart's parents, holding on to hope he'll be found.
It doesn't look great, but we gotta believe he's the kind of person that will survive.
There's no doubt in my mind he could have swam 10 miles, 20 miles if he had to. Our hope was that, you know, he was still above water, and that hope is what kept us going for 3 days in the search.
What was Alex doing at that point, and how important was it?
The search wouldn't have happened the way it did without her.
You were, for the media and for much of the world, sort of the face of the family.
You sit there and you say, okay, Rob's missing. What can we do? What is everything possible we can mobilize and throw at this problem to give Rob the best chance at being found?
We can get any help with that. You know, people walking the beach, people out in their boats, you know, anybody if they've got a low, slow flying plane or search and rescue experience.
Anybody that is capable that can come out and give us a hand and help find him.
The search itself was hugely detailed. Like, do we need boats or helicopters or underwater vessels? Where do we come from? How do we pay them?
We've had an incredible amount of support come in from all over the world.
Now they're out there with several other boats sweeping search patterns out in your Alligator Reef.
You know what? They're not going to give up the search now because he could, you know, quite easily be found, we hope.
Was it hard not to be there?
To not have my parents around to kind of not go through that experience with them, yes, yeah, hugely hard.
And lonely.
Yes, yes.
You don't sleep. You're up all night and you're sort of tossing and turning and trying to say, okay, you know, please God, find my son.
The U.S. Coast Guard says that they've already searched over 7,700 square kilometers for more than 68 hours for Rob Stewart.
At one point, the Coast Guard came to you guys and said, we need to stop.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
Well, we actually got a notice that they were going to come and see us, and we preempted that. We went and saw them, and we sat with the head of the Coast Guard. And I asked him if he had kids. And he said he has a 27-year-old son and another son a little bit younger. And I said, if it was your son, would you stop? If there's any hope.
And they agreed to search for another day.
Yeah, it's been the hardest time of my life, but I still believe he's out there. He deserves us to keep looking, and we will keep looking.
As I speak, there is a Coast Guard C-130 aircraft from Air Station Clearwater currently flying. This aircraft will fly until sunset. Once this search is complete, the search will be suspended. The decision to suspend the search is very difficult, and it's not made lightly. Our hearts go out to Mr. Stewart's family, especially his parents.
On that final day, on Friday evening at quitting time, they were about to pull the search. Coast Guard said, we're giving up. It was our last moments out on the boat that I was on looking for him. And they said, well, it's time to call it. And I asked if we could just do one more pass, maybe down this line right here. And they said, yeah, sure, we could do that. And I said to the captain, we're gonna find him. I know we're gonna find him this time. And so I sat down, I started talking to him. I started speaking to his soul, for lack of a better way of saying it. And I asked him to please let me bring him home. And I still get a chuckle out of this, and he said no. You know, Robbie was the kind of dude that always wanted to be first in the water and last out, and he said, I'm happy here. This is where I want to be. No, I'm not coming. And I've said, of course you're not coming, but please, would you let me bring you back for your family, your mom, your dad, your sister, and for all these folks in the world that love you, that will not be able to find peace, that won't have any closure in this. He still said no. And I begged him one more time, and he said yes. Okay, I'll do it, but you have to make me a promise. I remember these words that he said very clearly. Promise me that you'll continue the mission, and that you'll finish our project, and you'll keep moving forward. And I said, of course, you have my word, of course. You know I will. And we found him that second, that very moment. It was like a lightning bolt, you know? It's a shock of energy, and he appeared.
This evening, right before sunset, a volunteer fire dive team located a body underwater and brought it here to the Coast Guard station, where it is being turned over to a medical examiner for identification.
It was horrific knowing my son was actually gone.
It's the news you just never want to hear.
Yeah, we packed up and didn't know what to do, but my daughter was struggling.
Did it matter to you that he surfaced?
Oh, it mattered that we found him. I wouldn't have stopped.
We would have gone forever looking for him,
I was
you know,
thinking
just
about
in
submarines,
case.
and I would use all the resources at my disposal. If I had to sell the house to find him, I would do that. I wouldn't have stopped.
There's been a lot of controversy over what happened to Rob that day on that boat. His parents have filed a wrongful death lawsuit in a Florida court, alleging 2 diving companies and the instructors were negligent in their care for Rob. One of the companies has filed a response denying the claims, which have yet to be tested in court, and all declined WFI's request for comment. In a moment, how Rob Stewart's legacy lives on.
From the podium
Conservation is the preservation of human life on Earth.
to the red carpet,
We're thrilled with the reaction.
when W5 continues.
It is 14 months since a lack of oxygen was ruled by a medical examiner to be Rob Stewart's cause of death. And at one of the world's most respected film festivals in Toronto, Rob's last film has just finished its debut screening. For 10 minutes, there's a standing ovation aimed at the family high on the front row of the balcony in the spotlight, who, with humility, accept it.
We made it.
You did it!
We're here.
High five.
Apparently some people liked it.
We're thrilled with the reaction.
Seeing the finished product, did it move you emotionally?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The ending scene when he smiles, he had a winning smile, and he was just such an inclusive person, and he loved people, and he looked after people, and seeing that smile.
You know, and a couple of the team members that came in from around the world had not seen the movie. And they were sitting directly behind us, and they were emotionally charged from the second it said last dive. It was tough because they struggled with it. They struggled with the whole experience, and they were very close to Rob.
Filmmakers Nick Hector and Sturla Gunnarsson were chosen by Rob's parents to complete their son's movie.
It's been a heroic effort on their part to finish their son's vision. I mean, the natural order of life is that children carry on their parents' dreams, and they're doing the opposite. They're finishing their son's vision, and they postponed grieving, and they've got to deal with that now.
For the other moviegoers who didn't know Rob as deeply, the film also provided inspiration.
I feel kind of like empowered as a filmmaker. It was an incredibly powerful experience for me.
It was incredibly sad at parts, but it was above all inspiring, and it makes me want to dive in and do everything I can to protect the natural world.
I think it's important that people recognize that activism is more important than anything else for conservation and conservation science in the 21st century.
A legacy of activism is perhaps the larger canvas Rob Stewart has left behind. His friends, of which there were many, have vowed to sustain his fight for sharks. Murals are being painted in several cities, including this one in Venice Beach, California, near where Rob had a home and had established a conservation institute attracting support from international activists like Richard Branson.
Sharkwater 1 opened my eyes to the devastation of sharks all over the world just for a bowl of soup.
His co-founder, Julie Anderson, is continuing that work.
And now that we're basically, coming to another generation of people who have been inspired by Rob, we're finding that people aren't going to become doctors and lawyers, and we have environmental lawyers, and we have, conservationists, and we have biologists, and we have a whole new generation of people who have been inspired by Rob.
His second movie, Revolution, reflected Rob's expanding political activism.
There's nothing more important than conservation, because conservation is the preservation of human life on Earth.
But his final movie, Sharkwater Extinction, has a far more urgent message.
I think the main message of the movie, everybody set out to make it as about the cause, right? Sharks don't have that much time, and shark conservation is ocean conservation, which is planet conservation, which is human conservation.
Do you think it's been therapeutic for the people working on the film?
I would hesitate to speak for them. I know, I think what my parents have done is heroic and has been sort of a huge personal cost to them. They stopped working on their business. They have let their health fall by the wayside. They've let their relationships fall by the wayside. This movie has been everything that they've been doing since the accident.
Have you felt a moment where you think he's looked down on you and said, "Thanks, Mom and Dad"?
Yeah, I think so. A calmness, and it's like, it's gonna be okay. We'll get through this.
Yeah, I think the other night, coming home after the screening, it had been a long day, and we got home and sat out on the deck, and there was a certain sense that, okay, did we do okay? And I think I felt like we did okay.
From that deck in their backyard, his parents chose where to bury some of their son's ashes. 9 places that meant the most to Rob Stewart. including the waters off Indonesia, where a shark sanctuary's been established, and where Brock and 2 other friends returned Rob to where he now rests, in peace.
Robbie, I know you wanted more than anything to come experience this little site here, but I can tell you the mantis came out today, buddy. And the dolphins, just about everything in the oceans. They showed up for you. So it's time for you to go for a little swim, my man. And I'm sure that little oceanic there is gonna pick you up on his wings and just carry you off.
Hey, baby brother. We got you here. I knew you were here before we even arrived, but time to put you back home. Thanks for showing up.
You're the best friend I ever had, Rob, and miss you, but everything about this magic mountain is just you. Every time I come here, anybody sees it, it's just you, man. So enjoy it for the rest, forever.
Rob Stewart's Sharkwater Extinction opens in more than 90 theaters across Canada in 2 weeks. That's the most ever for a documentary by a Canadian filmmaker. And in full disclosure, we should mention that our parent company, Bell Media, is one of the financial backers of the film. In a moment, an update on our previous investigations.